For those of you interested in the Second Amendment's right to keep and bear arms and the importance of American history to it, which you must be because the Supreme Court says that history, especially when it comes to gun history, is extremely important to define the scope of our rights under the Second Amendment, you need to at least know the story of Michael Bellesiles. That's right, a professor at Emory University that lost his job and so much more when he tried to write about gun culture in early American life. A story you have to know and will not forget when I tell it to you. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Boxes Diner, proud American gunner and constitutional attorney, member of the United States Supreme Court Bar, and New York Times bestselling author. If you haven't subscribed to the Four Boxes Diner Second Amendment channel, please do so. Show your love for the right to keep and bear arms and help us hit the 100,000 subscriber mark that we're trying so hard to get to help us with the algorithms. All right, folks, we know that under the Nysurpa versus Bruin, the way the Supreme Court interprets the Second Amendment going forward is it starts with the text of the Second Amendment as interpreted, defined, and applied by the Supreme Court. And to the extent an activity or an object or anything like that touches fingers with or is implicated by the text of the Second Amendment, then there is another step. When it comes to most aspects of the Second Amendment, that means that there is a search for historical analog laws that are somehow the same kind of laws as modern-day gun control laws, and a lot of those are non-existent. Nevertheless, the fact is that the historical search for certain early American history back in 1791 when the Second Amendment was adopted is very important for us to understand, which gives rise to why I want you to at least know about this important story from approximately 2001, 2002. The story of Michael Bellesiles. Michael Bellesiles was a professor at Emory University. Michael Bellesiles wrote a famous article in 1996 talking about the fact that, based on his research supposedly, early Americans did not have guns to speak of. They didn't like guns, they preferred other weapons, and that America did not become a gun culture until after the Civil War. That was his arguments based upon evidence that he's claimed to have had, including early American probate records. Now, when he published this article in 1996, it caused quite a stir. What caused an even bigger stir was in the year 2000 when he published a book called Arming America, where he expanded his theory that early Americans at the time of our founding, during the American Revolution, were relatively unfamiliar with guns, generally did not have guns, and guns were really scarce, and we were not a gun culture until, again, after the Civil War in the late 19th century. Now, needless to say, this caused quite a stir. As I see it, the gun control movement jumped at this to say, see, we told you so! The story of America being a gun culture was a made-up fact, made-up history by the NRA and their friends. America was never a gun culture. It was a myth. And Michael Bellesiles here, in his book Arming America, based on all of his historical work as a professor at Emory, proves the point. So Bellesiles got all sorts of wonderful comments and accolades, and he got the biggest accolade, the biggest award, the biggest honor that you can win as a historian in the United States. He was awarded for his work allegedly showing that there were no guns in early America to speak of. We were not a gun culture in early America. He received the prestigious Bancroft Award, awarded by historians at Columbia University in New York City. This is the highest honor that a historian or historical scholar can receive in American life, and Michael Bellesiles received this award. However, it turns out that as the book became more notorious and famous, more and more people started to look carefully at his supposed records that supported his hypothesis. Again, his hypothesis that early Americans did not have guns, did not like guns, were not a gun culture until after the Civil War. Well, it turns out that a lot of the evidence and records that he claims to have found to support his theory turned out not to be true. And it turns out that his record, his evidence, was so shoddily put together, was so fraught with errors, among other problems and omissions apparently, that the Columbia professors, or I should say the Columbia University Bancroft Award, was revoked from Michael Bellesiles. That's right. He lost the award because the work that he performed to justify his hypothesis that America was not a gun culture in 1791 and the like turned out to be, shall we say, incredible, not believable, and not supported, to the point where the Bancroft Committee revoked his award. Now, also I should say that Michael Bellesiles lost his job at Emory University and basically resigned in scandal and disgrace. I will put a link to some of the stories about the story in the description of this video below. Now, I only want you to know this story. I don't think you have to get into the details and the weeds of what he allegedly made up and where his scholarship fell down. I don't think you need to worry about this so much, but just put this into perspective. This work was done in 1996 through 2001. I think he lost the Bancroft Award, I believe, in 2002. This is 6 or 7 years before the U.S. Supreme Court decided Heller versus the District of Columbia. So think about this. The anti-gun community, the gun control lobby, in my view, were already trying to undercut and claim that America was not a gun culture at the time of our founding. Now we're literally decades after that story, that scandal, and here we are still talking about American history. Although I think the good news is that we are winning this fight for the Second Amendment and American history when it comes to gun culture. But it's very important that you know the story of Michael Bellesiles and the fact that he had to resign from Emory in disgrace after losing the Bancroft Prize for his shoddy historical work, because his book, Arming America, and you can Google this and check it out, it was such a huge deal. The anti-gun community literally embraced this book and scholarship to say, see, we told you so. And of course, it turned out to be not true by and large. And this is very important because as we go forward in places like the courts, the court of public opinion, political debates, legislative debates, and so on, a lot of history will be discussed. And as you discuss the history and you look carefully at what are appropriate historical analogs, never forget that it is the role of judges to interpret history, primary sources, and not to simply take the words of historians. So to wrap up, as we talk about history going forward, remember the story of Michael Bellesiles. This is very important because, again, the role of judges in applying the Second Amendment is to look at the laws themselves, the primary sources, and basically to tune out the noise of the historians, because it's not the interpretations or the theories of historians that ruled the day when it comes to applying the Second Amendment. It's the actual text, history, and tradition of American gun culture. And when it comes to the history of historical analogs, that means the judges have to look at the historical laws specifically and try to figure out what they meant at the time. That is their job. They don't have to wholesale embrace the views of any historian. And as we see from the story I've just articulated here, that even the most prestigious committee of them all when it comes to American historians, the Bancroft Committee, awarding the Bancroft Prize, got it wrong when it came to this famous, if not infamous, book by Michael Bellesiles that attempted to undercut the notion, the reality as I see it, of American gun culture going back to literally before the American Revolution, although Michael Bellesiles' theory in Arming America claimed that was not true. But it turns out his theory, his arguments, and his evidence was shoddy, unpersuasive, and ultimately was discredited to the point where he lost his award for the famous Bancroft Prize. Okay, I know this is a little geeky, but I want you to know this story. It's very important. I'll put some links to down below so you can check out if you want more information about it. It's a very interesting, fascinating story, especially for anybody that's into history or legal history. So check it out when you get a chance. And again, if you haven't subscribed to the 4 Boxes Diner channel, please do so. We'll see you again soon here at the 4 Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.